Chapter 1. The Bride. Picture a wedding in Uzbekistan. Gold jewelry stacked on the bride's wrists and neck, sometimes her entire dowry, melted down from family heirlooms. A bright embroidered dress in deep reds and golds, music, dancing, an entire neighborhood celebrating for days. This is the image this country is famous for. The most beautiful women in the world, the videos say, and looking at this scene, it's easy to believe it. But here's what those videos don't show you. By the end of that night, this woman has a new title. She's now a Kelin, a bride who moves into her husband's family home, where her mother-in-law will hold something close to absolute authority over her daily life. What happens to her in that house almost never makes it on camera. And neither does this. The gold on her wrists came from a country that, as of this year, holds $66.3 billion in gold and foreign currency reserves, a record high, almost double what it was 12 months ago. Uzbekistan has the fourth largest gold reserves on the planet. Her husband, in many households like hers, earns around $320 a month, sometimes less. Something here doesn't add up. And by the end of this video, you'll see exactly how those two facts, the gold on her wrists and the $320 in his pocket, are connected. Chapter 2. The house she moves into. Let's stay with her for a moment, because this is the part most travel videos skip entirely. Most women in Uzbekistan dress according to tradition and religion, modestly by default, especially once they're married. The label beautiful isn't wrong, but it's been pointed in the wrong direction. It was never meant to be looked at by a camera. It was meant to be lived in, inside a household with its own rules. In that household, the Kelin tradition means a new bride often has the least power of anyone under that roof, below her husband, and often below her mother-in-law too. In just 7 months of 2023, more than 21,800 protection orders were filed against domestic violence in this country, and roughly 85% of those were against family members, not strangers. In the first 10 months of 2025 alone, prosecutors confirmed over 10,000 cases. And in one region, Karakalpakstan, in the country's west, it goes further. Local organizations report that roughly 1 in 5 brides there is taken before the wedding against her will. 1 in 20 has never even met the man she's marrying. The practice predates the Soviet Union, families avoiding a bride price they couldn't afford, and it's fully illegal now. It still happens. Karakalpakstan. Hold on to that name, because that region is about to come back into this story, and it's the key to everything else. Chapter 3. The Sea That Was Spent. Karakalpakstan sits on the edge of what used to be the Aral Sea, once the 4th largest lake in the world. 70 years ago, you could sail across it. Today, it's almost 90% gone. Sand and salt where there was once water. Rusted ship hulls sitting in the desert like gravestones. Most places will tell you it shrank. That word does a lot of work to hide what actually happened. In the 1950s and 1960s, the Soviet Union decided this part of Central Asia would become a single giant cotton field, a cotton belt, built to feed Soviet textile mills. To grow cotton at that scale in a desert, you need water. So planners diverted the 2 rivers that fed the Aral Sea into thousands of miles of irrigation canals. The sea didn't have a chance. This was not climate change. It was a decision. And the people living in Karakalpakstan today, including families like the one our bride married into, are still paying for it. As the seabed dried, it left behind roughly 45 million tons of salt, lace dust, picked up by the wind and dropped onto fields, water supplies, lungs. Esophageal cancer rates in Karakalpakstan are now around 25 times the global average. Tuberculosis cases in the town of Minac rose nearly 70% in a decade. Infant mortality here runs 3 to 4 times higher than the old Soviet average. In July 2022, people in Pakistan protested against a proposed change that would have stripped the region of a constitutional right to secede. It has technically held since 1992, but never used. The crackdown that followed killed around 21 people, including 4 police officers, and injured more than 270. 3 years later, in 2025, Human Rights Watch reported that no one on either side has ever been held accountable. Drop one word in the comments for whatever surprised you the most so far. There is, at least, one piece of this story that's gotten better. On the Kazakhstan side, a dam called Kok Aral has helped the northern part of the Aral Sea recover roughly a third of its former water. Fish catches there are now more than 10 times what they were at the lowest point. Not the whole sea. Not even most of it. But something. So here's the question. A country sitting on $66.3 billion in gold, cotton, uranium, oil, is it corrupt? Or is something else going on? Chapter 4. The husband who isn't there. Here's the answer. The wealth in this country was never really designed to stay. The system still partly running today was built somewhere else, for someone else, a long time ago. The dust over Pakistan and the paychecks in Tashkent come from the same root. So in households like the one our bride married into, the math doesn't work, and the husband often isn't even home. The official minimum wage, as of 2025, was around $320 a month, sometimes cited closer to $315. In practice, a more typical wage is closer to $500. But as of January 2026, the legal minimum wage was raised to just 1,271,000 som, about $105 a month. That's the floor someone here is legally allowed to be paid. Less than what some people spend on parking, so people leave. Around 2 million citizens currently work in Russia. Around 100,000 work in South Korea. For a new bride, this often means her husband leaves for Russia within months of the wedding, sometimes for years at a time. Last year, the money these workers sent home, remittances, reached $18.9 billion, up 27% from the year before. Roughly 78% of it came from Russia. For the average household here, that money now makes up about 21% of total income, up from 16.5% just a couple of years ago. GDP per capita has actually grown fast, up over 21% in a single year, now around $4,661. That's real growth, but it's still among the lowest in the entire Eurasian region, what one source bluntly called the economic basement of the Union, a label that's stuck around since Soviet times. Ask people in their 20s here what they want, and a lot of them will say the same thing: out? Europe, if they can manage it. The US, if they're lucky. Not because they don't love this place. Almost everyone you meet here clearly does. But love and a $105 minimum wage don't pay rent. Speaking of which, the second word in this video's title. Chapter 5. The house itself. Cheapest. For whom? Cheapest country in the world. People who actually live in Tashkent will tell you it's not a cheap country at all, it's good value for money. That distinction matters more than it sounds, and it matters most for the household our bride now lives in. After 2022, when a wave of Russians relocated here following the mobilization order, rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Tashkent jumped to around $500 a month. That was supposed to ease off by 2026. It mostly hasn't. Central districts like Mirabad, Yakutsk, and Sheykantakur are now running around $10 to $11 per square meter, which puts a 50 square meter one-bedroom right back at $500 to $550. Property prices are still climbing, up nearly 10% year over year. Now put that next to the wage from the last section. A one-bedroom apartment costs roughly the same as, or more than, an entire month's wage for the person who might live next door to it. To a visitor converting from dollars or euros, $500 a month for an apartment sounds like a steal. To a family living on $320 to $500 a month, that same apartment is their entire paycheck. This is part of why 3 generations often live under one roof here. It's not just tradition, it's math. Cheap for whom, exactly? And it's not just Russians anymore. Since 2025, the Golden Visa program and looser residency rules for foreign property buyers have started pulling in investors from the UAE, Turkey, and Europe too. Every one of them is, in a small way, bidding against the people who were born here for the city they were born in. The label cheapest isn't describing this place. It's describing what it costs you to visit it. Those are not the same thing. And right now, the gap between them is being paid by the people who live here, one rent payment at a time. Chapter 6. What keeps the house together? And yet, this is the part that doesn't fit the hardship story neatly, and it's the part that matters most. Walk into that crowded, 3-generation household at the end of the day, and you'll find the table already set. Bakeries across the country turn out something like 8,000 loaves of bread a day, round, stamped, often baked in clay ovens that have barely changed in centuries. There's an old rule still followed in homes like this one. Bread is never placed upside down, and it's never thrown away. It's treated, almost literally, as sacred. On special days, and sometimes just because someone came home, there's plov, rice, meat, carrots, and onions, cooked slowly in a huge cauldron called a kazan, often by the men of the house, often outdoors, while everyone else gathers around. UNESCO added it to its cultural heritage list in 2016. There are something like 60 regional variations. In 2017, in Tashkent, 50 cooks made a single pot of plov that set a Guinness World Record, 7,360 kilograms, about 16,200 pounds. And then there's tea, poured constantly, all day for anyone who walks through the door. If the host pours your cup only halfway, that's not rudeness, it's an invitation to stay longer so they can keep refilling it. A full cup is the polite signal that it's time to go. Nobody writes this down. You just learn it, the way our bride learned it the first week she moved in. This is the part of life in Uzbekistan that the gold reserves and the rent prices don't capture, a household that, despite everything in the last few sections, runs on hospitality so constant, it's basically a reflex. And by most safety rankings, this is one of the safer countries in the world to walk around in at night, safer, by some measures, than New York or Berlin. But there's one more thing on these streets, and it's the thing almost every video about this country gets completely wrong. Chapter 7, the last label and the mirror. You'll occasionally see children begging here, especially around markets and tourist areas. The easy assumption is that they're local kids in poverty. That's usually not who they are. Many belong to a community called the Liulai, or Mugat, around 70,000 people, possibly distantly related to Roma communities elsewhere. They're often not accepted as fully belonging by either Uzbeks or Tajiks, shut out of mainstream education, healthcare, and jobs. For some, begging isn't a choice so much as the only door left open, which, in a strange way, brings this whole video back to where it started, back to the bride, with the gold on her wrists. Gold reserves at a record high. A minimum wage that doesn't cover rent. A label, beautiful, pointed at a woman who never asked to be looked at that way, walking into a household where she has the least say of anyone. A sea that didn't disappear, it was spent, and a region still living in its dust. A community pushed to the margins by everyone around them. Every one of these is a label this country wears, and under every single one of them is something more complicated than the label admits, and also something warmer than the label admits too. That's not unique to this country. It's just more visible here because the labels cheapest, most beautiful are louder here, and the gap underneath them is wider. The countries watching this video right now also run on cheap labor and cheap resources. They're just usually somewhere else, far enough away that the label on the package never has to mention it. So maybe the real question isn't about this country at all. Maybe it's this: the next time something in your life is labeled cheap, or someone is labeled beautiful, what are you not seeing? And who's quietly covering the difference? This place, by the way, is also recovering. Tourism is growing fast. The economy is growing faster than almost anywhere nearby. And the people here are some of the warmest you'll meet anywhere. That part's true too. Both things are true at once. That might be the whole point.